Legend of Total War here, and today we're going to be going over the Khorne campaign mechanics blog, which was just released by Creative Assembly. So big thanks to Creative Assembly for allowing me early access to the blog, giving me some time to actually wrap my head around it, so it's not a big rush. So that takes a bit of pressure off all this stuff. I kind of regret not covering the Cathay and Kislev mechanic blog, just because I didn't normally like covering blogs. I want to see gameplay, and while this isn't gameplay, we're getting an idea of what the game is actually like, so I'm sort of I guess I'm just getting used to it. I don't really want to bang on about how I don't want to see any more trailers and blogs, but you know, these campaign mechanic blogs, they're actually quite an interesting read, and I wasn't really that keen about Khorne going into, you know, the announcement of Total War 1 and 3. Khorne is the Chaos God that I align least with, if I was to give like a tier of the gods that I align with. Not to say which one's strongest or weakest in my opinion, but which ones that I like the most. I'm at Cinch number 1, Nurgle 2, Slanesh 3, and Khorne at the very bottom. I just don't align with Khorne at all. But the stuff that they have written in here actually does intrigue me, and I think that I could actually enjoy a Khorne campaign. And I don't know if he'll be the strongest of the Chaos Gods, even though he's, you know, supposed to be. But there's some stuff in here that looks like it could be kind of broken, and I'm definitely attracted to broken things, so we'll see how we go. So just like with the other races in Warhammer 3, every race has their own unique currency, whether it be grimoires, devotion, whatever. The Khornate factions will get skulls, which is fairly predictable, I suppose, and skulls generate, much like every other faction, via battles, sieges, post-battle decisions, dilemmas, buildings, you know, loads of different ways it shows up. Basically, play the game, you get the resource. And it's not so much about trying desperately to look under rocks to find any trace of resources, but more about just playing the game as best as possible and then spending them wisely. So skull piles are also spawned by enemy armies during battle. So kind of like the vampire accounts, when two armies fight and that you may not have been present in, and they leave like a landmark there which you could raise the dead from. I imagine that Khornate factions can go over there and just like grab all the skulls. So it's quite possible, I don't know if this is the case, that they might go over to a huge pile of skulls or a graveyard and remove the graveyard and take all the skulls. So the vampire accounts might absolutely hate Khornate factions because they take away all their damn graveyards and stop the raise the dead stuff for them. So that could be interesting. I don't know if Creative Assembly's thought about that, but I'm just spitballing here. So skulls are used for a couple of things. The deadliest is the piling of the skull thrones. Whenever a large stockpile has been collected, it is expected, and I demanded, that it be laid in the feet of Khorne, such that he may pile the skulls thrown even higher. Doing so rewards you with massive sets of buffs, including bonuses to post-battle loot and movement range bonuses after raising settlement. So basically, there's other ways to spend the skulls, but the most of it is to basically give tribute to Skull Daddy over here. Just because he likes his skulls. You know, he likes his huge piles of skulls. I like my huge piles of gold and cheese, you know, to each their own. Anyway, for it is of the nature of the beast to continuously fight and destroy with little regard for building of civilization. If a Khorne must occupy a settlement and be at a significant cost of skulls, as the place must be properly adorned, the building's just set right. Yeah, so you need skulls for pretty much everything. So sacking and raising are better 90% of the time. So I imagine that expanding super quickly is probably not something that Khorne is going to do. But one thing that is notable about Khorne, and we can read this down later in the blog, is that Khorne expands by a bit of a weird way. You don't actually need to colonize settlements or ruins with Khorne. It can be done automatically. So we'll go over that in a little bit. So we got the blood call here. So there's two new options available to Khorne when they've overrun a garrison. There's the skulls for the skull throne, which generates a static 1,000 skulls for your purposes, destroying the settlement and killing the people. So this would be useful for blowing up tier 1 settlements. So what might be a good idea with this is, I don't know if Khorne can go into ambush stance, unlike, you know, like the Warriors of Chaos. But if they could blow up an easily colonizable settlement, because the AI, at least in Warhammer 2, is very prone to ruin dwelling. You blow up a settlement, go and hide, wait for them to recolonize it, and then just blow it up again straight away for 1,000 skulls. And you just use it like a really small army to do that, and this could be a really reliable way for one thing, keeping your enemy constantly beat down. They have absolutely no memory of being like constantly falling for the same trap over and over again, so it could be a way to cheese their skulls. Or it might not work at all, who knows. We'll have to wait and see. And then the second option is Blood for the Blood God, and this one does seem more useful. It greatly replenishes your forces and also spawns a new Blood Host army. This army cannot replenish or recruit, but is otherwise unlimited in its capabilities and costs no upkeep. The power of these armies scales with how many you've created, though the number of units they spawn can be increased through various means. So that's a bit vague, but they're separate from your main armies, and they can't replenish, they can't recruit. But these armies can go off on their own. They're under your command. They're not like the War ally armies where that you just like loosely tell them what to do and then they don't listen to you and then go get wiped out and you take a reliability penalty sort of thing. These are actually under your control, and you can send them out to die, or you can go and blow up another settlement, do Blood for the Blood God, and generate another Blood Host army. And then what you might be able to do is merge those two Blood Host armies to make one bigger one, and then, I don't know, maybe you could just use your Blood Hosts to essentially have 3 armies. I have no idea. It's likely due to balancing that these Blood Host armies will not be so powerful that they'll be able to just overrun every garrison, at least, on the instant they spawn. And it's probably just like with the Skaven, where you have to research certain technologies so that new units are added into the Blood Host when they're created. So at the beginning of the campaign, you might create a Blood Host army, and it's just full of garbage marauders or something. And then by the end of the campaign, you create a Blood Host, and it's full of bloody what's it called, juggernauts and bloodthirsters. Who knows? We have to wait and see. But we can get a rough indication of it. So yeah. So as you can imagine, this army can wander off and raise other settlements, spawning another army, who can then team up with their friends and head off another settlement, and so on and so on. These armies spawn with their full movement available, so yeah, they spawn, and then you can just use them straight away, so you can maybe even daisy chain them. So they can get going almost immediately. Obviously, as time goes on, they suffer attrition, losses in battle, more they'll begin to lose potency, but of course, any skulls generated from a suicide battle are valuable to Khorne. So apparently, even if you lose a battle, you still generate skulls. So sometimes even just losing benefits you, which is very Skaven of them, but that's fine, we'll see how that goes. Redoubling, so basically you don't want to disband your armies, you actually want them to go out and die. So that could be interesting. So redoubling the power of these armies is passive colonization. Should a Khornate faction have settlement in a province it shares with raised settlements, those settlements will eventually be automatically colonized at no cost by that faction. Of course, someone else can come along and take it first, but well, that's what Bloodletters are for. This means that you can spawn armies or harvest skulls for your favorite like and eventually take the settlement away. So what you'd want to do in this situation, I suppose, is let's just say there's a province with 4 settlements, and it is in the late campaign, and all the settlements are max tier, and you go in and you capture the capital, right? And you don't blow it up. You occupy that when it probably costs a lot of skulls, and you keep it at tier 4. And then you go and blow up all the minor settlements because they're easy to replace, right? And then you just leave those 3 as ruins, and eventually, after 5, 10, 15, who knows how many turns, they'll just automatically be recolonized, and then you own the whole province, and then you just move on from there. So you don't even need to worry about, painting the map essentially with Khorne. As long as you have one settlement in a province, you will eventually get there. But he definitely does seem to be a faction of not blitzing. It sort of he gets in his own way in many ways, but we'll see. So then we've got Bloodletting here. So Khornate armies exist for war and slaughter fighting, sustain them as milk and bread may, keep mortal man ready to serve. Should they stop, they'll begin to fade nothing. So lower replenishment rate, lower growth faction-wide, as well as less love for battle from the army itself. So there could be some kind of like momentum gauge on all of your armies. We don't have this like interface here to look at it, but much like the Beastmen, where they build up, if they keep fighting and raiding and stuff, then they get extra growth bonuses, and if it drops into like 0, they get massive growth penalties. But the thing is with the Beastmen, how it currently works is that by the late campaign, if you've actually got enough hordes, if you get your I think it's called Rampage, I can't remember, momentum down to 0. It actually barely even matters, so we'll see how they balance it for Khorne. So basically, you want to make sure all of your armies are constantly active doing something. Very proactive faction that you just need to be fighting constantly, even if it's fighting amongst yourself. So for every army you have that is rampaging across the land, it'll have an impact on your growth rate, replenishment rate, global recruitment time, and more. As you can imagine, having a number of Bloodhost armies all increasing your growth rates along with your main more powerful armies is extremely powerful. With the amount of death and destruction being handled by a Khorne faction on a regular basis, they can also exist at a negative favor gain if needed, given the constant influx of Battlefort. So Khorne does use money. So favor is just the chaos way of gold, right? They're not like Beastmen they do have favor, but they don't pay upkeep. It seems that Khorne will pay upkeep. I don't know yet if they suffer from supply lines. There's absolutely no information on this, or if there was, I completely missed it. And I can imagine that would be something that they need to tackle. It's quite possible as well that they'll actually implement the Troy administration system, which could be why they were sort of testing that in Troy. I don't know at this stage, but it also seems that if you fight a lot with these armies, it indicates that these are global bonuses, like global bonuses to your growth rate. So that could be good if you just got loads and loads of armies that have no supply lines and are giving you loads and loads of growth. You just build up really quickly, because if you are blowing up settlements and they're constantly taking settlements back at tier 1, then you're going to need lots of growth if you want to keep up in the late game, whereas other factions will just be capturing high tier settlements. So we'll see how that goes. We just need more information about that. Then we've got the Unholy Manifestation and Cults. These ones here I think is a little bit more interesting than Cinch. Well, not necessarily interesting. These are really basic, but I think that these are better than what I read from Cinch. When I was reading the cult, the manifestation stuff with Cinch, I was like, most of this stuff seems like crap, because it meant keeping an army from moving for several turns, and I don't like that kind of stuff. I like to stay proactive, and I don't like it when an army doesn't move for several turns. So I actually didn't like Cinch's stuff about that. It was the least interesting stuff. But the stuff here in Khorne is a bit more basic but more useful. Anyway, let's just read over it. So Eternal War, unlocked from the start, spawns a small Khornate army to attack your own army, triggering Bloodletting, giving you Skull's favor, XP for metal. So yeah, this could be good to just... I mean, obviously, it's got a cooldown of 15 turns. You can't do it constantly, but I'm just curious if you could attack this army, or it attacks you, you don't wipe it out, and that way you can attack it once per turn, because you need to attack an army twice in the same turn in order to wipe it out, or if you just beat it once and it's wiped out. I'm just wondering basically if I can milk it. I just don't know at this stage here, but I'd be curious if you can, because it could be a good way to get even more milk or blood from them. And then we've got Call of Battle here. It requires 1,000 global Khorne corruption. What 1,000 global Khorne corruption means, don't know. Whether that means influence or actual corruption, we will find out. And it seems to me like that is across all Khornate factions, not just about your faction. So that could be quite good. Well, we'll just have to wait and see. But pretty basic, giving an army 50% campaign movement range, probably with another 15 turn cooldown. 50% campaign movement range doesn't say if it's for 1 turn, 2 turns, don't know, but 50% campaign movement range is essentially force march, so that's good. It's better than nothing. Then we've got Slaughter Incarnate, 2,000 global Khorne corruption, doubles an army's skull gain from battle for several turns. See, this one here says several turns. They made a distinction there, whereas this one here, I get the indication it's just for 1 turn. So again, we just don't know. It could just be they failed to mention several turns, don't know. And even with this several turns, they're really not being specific here. They want to give you as much information for you to be still confused as fuck. That's what CA like to do. Let's give them information and actually tell them as little as possible. It's fine, at least we're getting something. We'll get there eventually. So then we've got Khorne's Glare, 3,000 global Khorne corruption, disables a friendly army's movement for several turns, which I don't like, and at the end it raises the local settlement automatically and gives a massive number of skulls. Again, this tells us something without telling us a lot. A massive number of skulls, several turns. What? 2, 3, 4, 5? 1,000, 2,000, 3,000, 4,000? Is it dependent on how big the settlement is? Can you put a lord with no army into a major settlement, tier 5 settlement, and just like put it at the very, very hard to reach part of the corner, and then pop this down, and then it'll just blow up like a tier 5 well-armed Skaven settlement? I don't know. We'll just have to wait and see. This one here is dubious. Like, I just don't know what this means. It tells us stuff without really telling us what it does. So we'll just have to wait and see with that. And then we've got the cults over here. So hideouts generate a steady supply of skulls per turn. Again, we don't have a distinct amount, it's just steady supply. 1, 2, 3, who knows. Finding Pit gives bonus skulls with every battle fought in the province, so you don't want this in regions that are very safe, obviously. So another thing is that it seems like you can... these work very similar to Undercities. I imagine that your cults can only build one of these 4 things, but you can build them, I think, in your friendly buildings as well as enemy ones, based on what I'm seeing here. But again, I don't know where, or like what the application is of these and where they can be built. We'll just have to wait and see. Then we've got Lodge, generate large supply of skulls per turn if a lord of any faction is present. So leaving a general behind to make sure that generates skulls could be bad, especially if there's supply lines. But one thing that you could probably do to cheese this is when you've just about finished off a faction, right? You capture their last settlement, but you don't wipe out all their armies. They're left hanging around with like a couple of troops, and they'll constantly keep trying to retake the settlement, right? So if you put the lodge there and then just ensure that you don't finish off that faction, just leave them hanging on by a thread indefinitely, could be a way to cheese that. But we'll have to wait and see. They might find a way to prevent you from doing it. Just gotta wait and see. Another thing is that if there's a rogue army that shows up in your area, especially if the rogue army is sort of like deactivated, that could be a good way to cheese it. Again, we'll have to wait and see. They might fix that sort of, because currently rogue armies, when they spawn, if you click on them, they'll have like a white movement area around them. If it's white, that means that they can't move at all. They're essentially stuck in a dilemma, and they won't come out of it until they're either pushed out of it or they basically find some way out of their dilemma. So sometimes they'll sit there for 20, 30, 40 turns, just not moving. So that could be a good one for that. Then we've got Arena. Destroys the cult upon completion, but teleports your faction leader and their army to the settlement. Don't know what they would possibly do to enemy city once they get there. So yeah, this really indicates that you can build this in enemy city. So this kind of reminds me of Vermintide from the Skaven, where it seems like Khorne is actually drawing a lot from the Skaven, which I wouldn't have expected. So yeah, just wherever your faction leader is, he could be on the other side of the world. He just teleports over there, and hopefully still has his movement, and he can go and blow up the settlement, or not. Just got to wait and see exactly how that works. Then we've got the tech tree here. We can't see what all the techs are, but we get a little bit of a hint. So we've got... basically, they come in groups of 8, because 8 is Khorne's special number. And you seem to only need to research 3 from a particular category before you can move on to the next one. So you research 3 from here, then move on. 3 from here, then move on. We can see that there's various amounts of skulls needed. These ones here being 50, and these ones here being 100. And maybe it goes 150, 200, so it gets gradually more expensive, so you need to get more skulls. But as you own more settlements, you probably get more skulls passively, so they'll become more affordable. We'll have to wait and see. You can see in this particular scenario here, supposed to got 3,675, it seems, at 100% research rate. Cool. We don't know what any of these technologies do. We can see what they say they do, but we don't know what the actual effects of them are. It seems like he's got a fairly long tech tree. This seems to be about, I don't know, 1/5, 1/4 about of their full tech tree. So we'll just have to wait and see exactly what it is. Yeah, see, we just covered all that stuff there. Alright, then we've got Coronate and Demonic Diplomacy. So one element worth noting is that mortal peoples of the world are not fans of their demonic invaders of the north. Really? I wouldn't have guessed that. War is automatically declared between... I'm just being sarcastic, by the way. War is automatically declared between any non-Slaaneshi demon faction and any non-demonic factions it meets, with a couple of exceptions: Skaven, Norskins, and Warriors of Chaos. So, I'm sure you can deduct exactly what that means, but we'll just go into a little bit more detail. So, if you're playing as Khorne and you encounter anybody except for another demon, a Norskin, a Skaven, or Warriors of Chaos, war is automatically declared. Same thing for Nurgle, same thing for Tzeentch. Tzeentch automatically declares war on people, apparently. Except for Slaanesh. It seems like Slaanesh will actually be able to do some kinds of diplomacy with other people. It definitely would have been weird to see Khorne getting a military alliance with Reichland, but I can kind of see it with Slaanesh getting military alliances with Dark Elves. So we'll see how that goes with that. Everybody else not so much. Demons may ally with demons, but there's always rivalries, and Khorne in particular has a great hate of Slaanesh. Yep, fair enough. And the two rivalries, so the rivalries clashes between the Chaos Gods are Slaanesh and Khorne hate each other, and Tzeentch and Nurgle hate each other. The funny thing is I align with Tzeentch and Nurgle the most. I don't find too much of a conflict there, and I align with Slaanesh and Khorne the least. Because they don't align with how I like to play or my personality at all. Anyway, so yeah, based on what we've read here, my thoughts about Khorne is that it's probably going to be, for me personally, less fun than a Tzeentch campaign. I'm not upset about that. I was kind of expecting it. It seems that Khorne's going to have more armies than everyone else, the other demons, but kind of needs them more because he has to keep fighting. If you don't fight as Khorne, you will slow your campaign down into a rot. I think that the kind of people that are going to enjoy a Khorne campaign are not going to be turtlers. So if you're the kind of person that at turn 50 has 3 settlements and you're just sitting around pressing end turn, Khorne is probably not for you. This is definitely going to be for the more aggressive people that just like to just declare war willy-nilly and just get into the fight. And even if you lose your battle and lose your army, you still generate skulls. Not to say that it's good to lose, it's just that you kind of have a bit of a silver lining with it. So that could be interesting there. But I don't see Khorne as being one of the more interesting factions. It's just more interesting than I thought it was going to be. As for Skarbrand's unique mechanics, we don't have any information on that. I imagine it's going to be coming eventually. But overall, I'm fairly happy with what I've read here about Khorne. It's better than I expected, because I wasn't expecting anything good, because I don't like Khorne. But we'll see how we go. Anyway, that's the end of this one here. If there's anything in here that I haven't covered, I think I was fairly thorough, but if there's something here that I missed and you wanted me to cover it, feel free to leave a comment. I will try to cover questions, especially if I really didn't cover it and you ask a question that it's actually in the blog and I just glazed over it or didn't think it was important. I'm happy to answer that stuff. But I think I was reasonably thorough. But let me know with some feedback below. I'll try to cover more of the blogs, especially if it actually covers actual game mechanics. But if it's just like lore or what they're doing in their spare time, I don't care that much. Not that I don't like the lore. Like I do enjoy reading about the lore of Warhammer. I really do. I just don't want to make videos on the lore because I don't do that. I cover the gameplay, not the lore. I like the lore, but I just don't cover it. So that's sort of what I'm focusing. I really want the channel to just be focusing on gameplay for the most part. But yeah, hopefully we'll be seeing some actual gameplay soon. But we'll just have to wait and see. Anyway, that's the end of this one. Appreciate you guys, and we'll see you next time, fuckers. Bye.